Well, ho, 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 and welcome to ATGLive, your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars. It is a Thursday night. It is the holiday season, as you can tell by my festive sweater and white beard. I only have the white beard for Christmas and every other holiday. Nick, good to see you, my friend. How are you? What's going on?
Well, first of all, my mother would not be pleased if you called me a hoe. So I don't
yes, that's
that.
true. Yeah, I apologize for that.
So,
not to you, but to your mother. No,
that's right. Take that, Mom. I am excellent. I am excited to spend another Thursday night. We are going to talk to one of our favorite people. We're going to get into a bunch of news. We're going to get to Skeleton Crew later. It is a quality Thursday night.
It is. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We have a podcast, an after show podcast called Beyond the Barrier.
Mm-hmm.
We did it last week. We're going to do it again this week. And what we kind of learned is, you know what? It is hard to do a show right after you watch it. And so everybody else is doing their after shows. We have this wonderful Thursday night opportunity. So what we want to do is we want to hang out with you after ATGLive, almost like two shows in a row, like Cheers, and I can't remember what was on after Cheers, but it's must see TV, Thursday night must see TV here on the SSW network. You're going to get ATGLive, and then afterwards stick around, because we'll be recording our Beyond the Barrier podcast, and we want you to be a part of it. If you're a patron, you have received a link, and you can join us during Beyond the Barrier, easy for me to say, and bring your thoughts, your comments, and where you're coming down on the show. We'd love to hear from you. We'll also be watching the chat, but that's later on in the show. As Nick mentioned, we have Greg Iwinski joining us tonight, good friend of the show, Emmy award-winning writer, has worked on Young Jedi Adventures and a number of other things. He's what he was an Emmy for. It was for
Last
the
night with John Oliver.
Right. So always a good time. He's also a representative of the Writers Guild, and he has given us a lot of information over the last 12 to 18 months about all the stuff happening there. So really excited to bring all that to you tonight. Plus, as Nick mentioned, there's a bunch of news tonight. So we have a jam-packed show, as they say. Nick, let me turn it over to you. Is there any other housekeeping that I missed?
There is tons of housekeeping that you missed, Pete.
Well, it's
pretty much everything that you can think of, you didn't say.
That's why I didn't think of it.
That's the best place to start is our website, the sswnetwork.com. That is literally your one-stop shop for everything that we do, who we are, videos, links, social media. Social medias are on the screen. We have most of them. We only sometimes use some of them. So social media is like a favorite pair of shoes. Sometimes, like, I'm just going to wear these for a while and then get tired of it and switch to another one. But on all of your social media handles, we are at the SSW Network. You can find those, like I said, on our website. You can find links to our merchandise. We make dumb t-shirts and they make us laugh. Most of them are made just for our entertainment, but you would like some of them too. So if you go to that website, t-shirts, pint glasses, stickers, flags, you name it, it's probably there. You can get information on the Patreon program. The Patreon program is something we are very proud of. For as little as $3 a month, you can be a part of some of the inside access stuff that we do, recording around the galaxy episodes. Right now, one of the perks is the Beyond the Barriers after show for Skeleton Crew. Gives you an exclusive link to call in and join us and share your thoughts on Skeleton Crew live while we are doing that show, coming up in just a little bit tonight. So I tell you what, if you join right now,
Yeah,
Pete might even get the email and know you joined, and we can get you that link, and you can call in and be a part
we'll
of
mention
the
it.
show.
We'll get you the link. Actually, if you join, if you go to patreon.com/the SSW network, when you join, the link will be waiting for you. So you can,
It'll be right there. You'll see it in one of your messages. So
great.
Lots of fun to be had. We also have a voicemail line. We want to hear from you. 504-321-1501. You can call that at any time, day or night. It's not going to wake us up. That's the beauty of the internet and phone numbers. But again, you could be watching Star Wars at 3:30 in the morning on a Tuesday and think, holy crap, I've had a thought that no one has ever had before. Call it and tell it to us, and we'll play it on the air. We'll talk about it, tell you you're smarter than us, and it's another way to get involved. So that's a very long-winded way to say the SSWnetwork.com is your literal one-stop shop for everything we do.
Plus, we're sorry, go ahead.
I was just say, find us, annoy us, send us emails, voicemails, blow us up.
Yeah, we want to hear from you. We do. We really
it's more fun when you're involved. That's what we're trying to say.
Exactly. Thank you, Nick, for making it so crystal clear. So we had Snokevember. We had Snoketober, and now we're carrying it on. We're bringing it into Darth December. And Nick, tell us a little bit about Darth December. This is how we're going to kick off the show for the rest of the month.
We are some drinking fellas. That's no secret around here. We like to toast at the beginning of the show. We like to toast our friends, events, things that are going on in the world. Star Wars, a lot of Star Wars. I think 4 times out of 7, usually I toast John Williams because that's just what we do. Not doing that tonight. No? But Darth December works the same way that Snoketober and Snokevember does. We have a delightful beer of your choice. We always love it when you play along at home and join us. You take your action figure for Snoketober. For Snokevember, it's a Snoke. But for Darth December, we have a Darth Vader. I have a vintage Darth Vader. You throw it in your glass, and in here in just a second, I'm going to hit the drop on our audio clip. It's a 10-second audio clip that correlates with what we're doing. And the point is you're supposed to drink your beer in those 10 seconds. So college rules apply.
I didn't bring a beer, so I'm going to just I'm going to drink a little bit more bourbon than normal at the
be blacked out show before the first commercial break. He's going to Darth December some bourbon, which I'm proud of. But I'm going to raise our Darth December toast tonight to Jude Law. We talked about this in our news story last week, but Jude Law got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame today.
Yes, he did.
I saw that David Lowery was there, who's directing a couple of the episodes of Skeleton Crew that Jude Law is in. Mm-hmm. Jude Law has had a long and delightful career. He's done a lot of different things that a lot of people have loved. I think he's young Dumbledore, early Harry Potter. Goes way back. I know the movie Alfie means a lot to musicals and folks that like that movie. Has had a long, great career and is still doing great things. I love that he said in one of the interview clips today that part of growing up with Star Wars was he always wanted to be Han Solo. And he said every now and then, depending on who you're playing with, you want to be Darth Vader. And so what we're seeing with his character right now as we figure him out, we don't know. He may get to be a little bit of both. So
he feels kind of like Obi-Wan and Han Solo, which is cool. Exactly. So he's getting to do the cool stuff. So
tonight, we're going to raise our Darth December toast to Mr. Jude Law. Congratulations on your star on the Walk of Fame. I am going to hit this button, and we're going to do it. We're going to start over because that was the end of the clip.
When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master beer.
He did it again. You were the master of beer, Darth, among us for sure. So
if we want to get technical, I may have not quite.
Oh, yeah, man. But I'm going to blame that on you were a little thrown off because we started and stopped, and you're
we'll start with
the smooth swing. It's okay. We get it. Somebody shouted in your backswing. I get it. It's cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're either going to hit the news or we're going to have Greg here. We don't know how this is going to work out, but you're going to be with us no matter what, and we're going to get to hang out and do some fun stuff. But we will be back in just a minute with more ATG Live.
What's up, my fellow Gen X Star Wars fam? My name is Chris Rhines from Broaxium. You may know me from ATG's Force Connect that I co-hosted with Pete and Nick. Now, I'm the owner and operator of Roaxium Outpost, an online shop for all your action figure and collectibles needs like Star Wars Black Series, G.I. Joe Classified, Star Wars Vintage Collection, Marvel Legends, Star Wars Black Series and Vintage Collection, Transformers Studio Series, Star Wars action figures, Masters of the Universe, and much, much more, including Star Wars action. Alright, I have a lot of Star Wars stuff, I'm just saying. Stop by and check out the store at www.proaxiumoutpost.com. Sign up to become a part of the Bounty Hunters Guild and stay updated on new pre-orders, sales, and exclusive Proaxium content. Find something you like? Use the promo code ATG5 for 5% off your first order. We have Star Wars figures, by the way.
That is our sole sponsor, our number one. I like to call him our premium platinum level sponsor, in that he doesn't pay us, but we promote him because we love what he does. So if you're a fan, look, I've said it before. I said it when Chris was co-hosting a couple weeks ago. You're going to buy this shit anyway. Go do it from Chris. Yep. Go to proaxiumoutpost.com. Seriously, he's got all the stuff. He's got access to pre-orders before most people, and I know a number of our listeners can account for the fact when he packs the stuff, not only is it packed extremely well, better than you're going to get it from Target or Walmart or wherever you might order, but he tends to throw in like a comic or something additional, like a little surprise. So go to proaxiumoutpost.com and support our good friend Chris Ryans. So yeah, so there we have it.
It is the holiday season. Let me ask you this question. I actually think I asked you this question the other week.
Yeah.
What is something that Chris could provide?
Oh, yes.
That if you were ordering something from Proaxium right now, what would you order?
You know, probably. You know what, from Chris, I would order the Chimere helmet or the whatever the stranger helmet, from the Acolyte, just because I think it's cool. It wasn't my favorite show, but that helmet, there's no denying it's one of the coolest looking things that we've seen in Star Wars in a while. So
I think that's an excellent.
That's what I'm. What would you order?
I think, and it's a Disney. I want to say it would be the 3PO head, but he doesn't have that because that's Disney.
No, it's Disney exclusive. Yeah.
I think I got my eyes peeled for the pre-order for the SM33. Because I don't buy a lot of action figures, but I'm going to need that one in my loop, to end up somewhere back here behind me.
And the Black Series droids, I have a couple of them up top there. They're so cool. Yeah, I think that's a good one. That's a really good one. So, awesome. Well, good. Well, we are going to be joined in just a second by our friend Greg Iwinski. If you came for the Skeleton Crew conversation, hold on. We're going to do that at the top of the hour with a recording of our podcast, the after show podcast called Beyond the Barrier. We're going to go in deep on Skeleton Crew. We want you to hang out with us. But first, we're going to talk to Greg. Then we're going to hit the news, and then we're going to go there. But so without further ado, you know him. You love him. You've seen him on the show before. Mr. Greg Iwinski. There he is.
Hello. Okay. I cannot hear you.
You can't hear us.
I just want to be honest. I'm seeing your shocked faces. I cannot hear any audio.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to take my AirPods out.
Okay.
I'm going to try to just
see what happens.
Let me see if I can hear you now. I cannot hear you. Oh,
you
no.
cannot hear us. We'll keep talking. Oh,
I've
no.
done something horribly wrong.
Oh, no.
This is the threat of live television.
Exactly what I was going to say. It's almost like he knew what I was going to say.
He knew what you were going to say, and he couldn't figure it out.
I wish I could give you tech support.
Trying to see if I can hear you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm very sorry to destroy this segment right off the bat.
The magic of our podcast.
But
right.
And now I'm like, what do I do?
Let's just sit here. You know
I'm
what?
not sure what to do.
We should just solo him out.
I'm going to disconnect. Hello, everyone. It's me who can't hear you at all. I'm going to disconnect this microphone, and I'm going to just go old school, just AirPods, and see if that works.
All right.
That's my plan.
Okay.
So 1 second.
Now he's muted.
Now he's muted. He's moving. This is great behind this. So if you're watching this,
No, we can't hear you.
And I hear you. Can you hear us? No. Can you hear us?
Okay.
Wait.
I can, yes. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Awesome.
Yes.
I was
We're
going to
back.
comment on how nice your new microphone looked.
It's not. I couldn't. So my microphone pack connects to via USB-C, and I thought, well, this super thin USB-C that's just for power, that must work for data. No, it does not. It does not work. Cable too thin. Classic story.
Well, we solved it. We're here.
Yes.
Welcome,
Thank you so
sir.
much. That was very Star Wars because that's like you're in the Millennium Falcon and you're trying to go hyperdrive and something breaks.
I wish I had that sound effect ready. I should have had it ready.
What, of the engine not working?
Yeah. I should always have that.
Classic sound.
Well, how are you, sir?
Oh, doing great. Just living life, hanging out in this world of Star Wars, watching Young Jedi Adventures get 4 Emmy nominations.
Let's start there because that was exciting. Texting you today when Pete sent that to me.
Yes.
This is for season 1. We know you worked on some episodes for season 2.
Yes.
And
I wrote one episode of season 1, so I've touched both seasons.
That's right. So that's exciting stuff because we don't always hear lots of things about animation or kid shows when it comes to Emmys.
And they started this thing, the Children and Family Emmys. They basically recognized that this valuable work and that it needs to be recognized. And so last year was the first one. Our show wasn't out yet, so it didn't get anything because it had just come out. And so
here's the real question: did they start the Children and Family Emmys because of Bluey and the impact that Bluey had?
I think it's part of a larger movement like you're seeing in the Animation Guild negotiating now, and the fact that in the Writers Guild East we just organized both Sesame Street and PBS.
Okay.
For those animation writers to be part of the guild. So like previously, if you wrote a regular live action piece of Sesame Street, you were in the Writers Guild. If you wrote the animated section, you were not in the Writers Guild. If you wrote Don Quixote, the puppet show, you were in the Writers Guild. If you wrote Alma's Way, a cartoon show, not in the guild.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's it's one of those things where it's just great to see all this work being recognized. I think when we were growing up, there's some really good cartoons, but also there was a lot of stuff where you go back and you see the oral history now, and it's like a bunch of guys who were like, I don't know, we just kind of we went to Burbank, we threw stuff at a wall, we were like, animate that, and then we left, and so it's a little bit now. I think that the teams that come together to make these shows now are just working so hard, and especially Young Jedi, where it looks so good. So much 3D animation is just kind of flat. I mean, the hair texture in it is real, and that goes from Kai's hair to Raxlo's feathers, like all sorts of different hair texture, and they're real Star Wars stories. I actually I got drinks with a different late night writer right before this, and he was telling me, he's like, I started watching your show with my son, and it's great because it's an on-ramp to Star Wars. Like I can show him it, and I said they're real Star Wars adventures. It's not. There are some other kids shows in those action universes that I think are very baby talky and overly simple and bright colored, and like you guys I know have seen that season 1 and 2, and the back half of season 2 is even grittier. It's more High Republic. It just moves further and further towards High Republic tone, is what I would say. We're not.
There's not going to be like a field trip to Starlight Beacon at the wrong time, is there?
No, they were there. They're there at its beginning, and they're there. No, they were there for the opening. Right. I do not. It's so crazy because I think about these kids, and I'm like, they have the happiest existence of anyone in the High Republic. Everyone else is dying, enslaved, occupied in a war, and these kids get to be like, I had a great time. I don't know, when the Nile were around, I had a great time, man. It was fun.
It's like the kids got to go check out the brand new fire truck right before it had to go, get crushed in 9/11 or something.
Yeah. Here's Building 7, kids. Why don't we go on a tour?
What is it about Yub Nub and 9/11 that comes up every freaking time?
We do. I think it's because we all live in New York, so it's just in the and I would say for the Empire, the Death Star was their 9/11, but we don't think about that very much, do we? Who's the terrorist now?
Yeah,
who's the terrorist now?
I say that. Not all the time because I talk about other things occasionally, but yeah, I that's where Star Wars is. We're going to talk a little bit nostalgia if we get there. I don't know. I don't care. Let's just have some fun. But when you think about where people have ideals about what Star Wars used to be and what it should be and that sort of thing, and I say all the time, like in the 70s, good guys, bad guys was black and white. It was, I mean, literally, you had. It was easy to see who the good guys and who the bad guys were, and all you knew is these guys were rebels. And if you think about rebels, I mean, I remember in school, I'm old enough to remember the bicentennial celebration of the U.S., right? So there was I was 6, so I wasn't like that old, but I remember, and we talked about how our troops were so creative and how we hid in the bushes and now that sounds a lot like what's happening in Afghanistan.
I mean, you have it's very interesting to go from the rebels in Star Wars being the heroes to the Democratic candidate for president bragging into a microphone, "We have the most lethal military on the face of the earth," and you're like, "Oh, that's the milder option militarily." So. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we're rebelling, but we're not that rebelling. No. But the rebels are still happening. Look at, not to get too political. It's not political. It's just mentioning global events. But Syria just had an actual rebellion. We talk about coups and rebellions, and they're going to do the thing that we talk about in the EU of a messy group of rebels with disparate interests and beliefs are going to figure out a new government, and that's sometimes governing is harder than rebelling. And all the things that we wrote in books from 1990 to mid 2010s. So it's. I think they all stay. Nostalgia is best when it stays relevant. When nostalgia is inaccessible, it feels. I think there's things you go back to, not just in Star Wars, but in cinema and in TV, and you just go, There's a reason we moved on from this.
Yeah.
If you watch something old and that's the thing you get is I don't love this, but there's nostalgia there's something about it that's still with you, that still resonates, that's still relevant, I guess is what it is. I mean, and that I think is when it hits best.
Well, it's interesting because I always look at, and it's usually around Thanksgiving time, the holiday time, because you get together with old friends you haven't seen for 10, 20 years since high school. And I always I put the metrics, the yardstick against when I get together with that person, are we spending all our time talking about, remember that party at Joe's house and we almost got caught? Or if we talk about what's happening in our lives. So, and those are sort of like two different types of friends. You have the nostalgia friends and you have the friends that are still growing, even if you don't see them for a long period of time. So I guess to tie that to entertainment and Star Wars, and we can talk about any franchise you want, because I think it's becoming more and more relevant as so many franchises are being sort of reinvented or revisited. Are we leaning too heavily into that? And who's done it really well, do you think? And where do you think there's a good way to, use nostalgia to keep people into the existing franchises? And is it a good idea?
I think the problem ends up in with the nostalgia convo is that everything means something to somebody different to somebody else, in the sense that, online, and I don't give a lot of credence to online talk, but you'll hear people talk about there's that South Park thing of member berries, which is this attack on you're just using items people recognize as a way to get people to like things.
Right.
And my response to that would be Deadpool 3 is the most money-making R-rated movie in history, and the only thing the movie does in a fun way is go, do you remember this? Sometimes literally goes, do you remember this? And you go, I do, cool. Now it's with that other thing. And they do that for 2.5 hours, and it's the most successful R-rated action movie of all time. So so it's like, it's critiqued when people don't like the movie. It's celebrated in a box office. I think the issue isn't nostalgia. I think it's when you're doing it well, especially in big worlds, like if you're talking about the Lord of the Rings animated movie comes out in theaters tomorrow. No one's talking about it. There's no marketing budget, but there's a real new Lord of the Rings movie coming out tomorrow. But all of these things, I think it's about, are you are you using the history of the storytelling? Are you using those things to make it cooler? That's why I think like a callback is always a little cooler than just nostalgia, where it's you do something in the same way. But also to me, it's when I think about nostalgia or I think about movie nostalgia, it's just the moments that I said wow in a theater, the moments that blew my mind. So I think about, and let's stick with, we're talking about kind of AAA, very populist, big movies, not art, whatever. It is art, but I love populist art. I love art that's just made for a bunch of people to like it and have fun. But like Gandalf coming over the hill, what? Like that, or when Kylo Ren catches a lightsaber, pops it through a guy's head and turns it off, and you go, what? Or like when Jason Bourne takes a book and punches a book into a guy's throat, and you're like, what? And those moments where you go, what? Those then become nostalgia. Is just, they're the things we remember. They were the things that were so cool and so big that we remember. And if you're just, and I think as a writer or creator, you definitely don't want to just take someone else's cool idea and do it again. You want to go, what's my moment? What's my way to do that? And so, I think you've got things coming out like I haven't caught up on Skeleton Crew yet because I have kids and holidays and a lot of stuff. But just even just with anything that comes back that we watch again. I mean, even Saturday Night, the movie about Saturday Night Live, there's some nostalgia involved there. But if it's a good story that plays around in a place people know, I mean, then it's a good story. It's not like when you're writing a movie, or a show, it can be less good because it's nostalgic. And I think especially with Star Wars, you really want to clarify that referencing the universe isn't nostalgia. Like if you go into Mos Eisley Cantina and the bartender's like, a long time ago, this old guy came in here and I yelled at the and he just lays the scene back out. Yeah, that's not great. Right. But if you go back into the bar and now it's an auto body shop, but then you kind of notice it, like that stuff, that's fine. I think, it's if you're just copying, I think that becomes bad nostalgia. But in reality, it's fun to remember the parts that were cool, and it's fun when you do it sparingly. But audiences do not respond super well to serious nostalgia, except, and I think this is the thing about Deadpool, is the movie is overtly about that.
Right.
The movie is about memory, looking at the past, taking the past apart, disassembling it. There's an entire section, we've all seen it, but there's an entire section just looking at how Fox mishandled their superhero movies. For 15 minutes, we're just looking at actors that we know were wronged in real life and just dealing with their grief. So it's a very unique kind of thing. But yeah, I think nostalgia is great. I mean, it's so funny because it's like saying, oh, this place is just making cheeseburgers. It's just nostalgia. No, it turns out people love cheeseburgers. We should just keep making them. Like it's like, oh, they're just relying on nostalgia. Burger and fries. It's been done before. Yeah, it turns out it's super popular for a reason. So taking some young character and being like, they're going on an adventure, then they get a lightsaber, then they beat somebody up. Like, I don't think it's nostalgia. Very long answer. Also, this mic is bad. It's attacking me now that I get it.
The mic is pissed. The mic was like,
get out of here.
Yeah, that mic has different feelings about nostalgia than you do. Clearly.
It's droid resistance, Mike. It's ready to be set free.
Well, I love that answer, and I love that idea that just because we've seen it before or it's familiar doesn't necessarily make it nostalgia. It's a part of the world, like you said. If you go into the cantina, and the cantina, that the irony of something like that is like, we grew up, we watched New Hope. They walk in, you're droids. That we don't serve their kind here. They have to wait outside. Then we see in Mando season 3, there's a droid bar, and it's funny because they're like, oh, the one bar you can't take droids in. This one's mostly for droids. Like, that's turning it on its head. It's getting that self-referential aspect to it. Deadpool, it's all about fourth wall and breaking and looking at the camera and talking to the audience. For Star Wars, I don't think we ever cross the line where it becomes is there a line for too self-referential for Star Wars? What does that look like?
Well, I think the thing about nostalgia too that really makes it unique is it's like a longing to go backward, right? So when you're like you can go home at Thanksgiving and see your friends and you're like, man, that was fun, and we did that thing and we did those dry ice bombs and threw them in everybody's yards. Anyway, we've moved on with our lives, and that's a fun memory, but we're doing things. Or it could be the guy who's like still wearing his Letterman jacket
Right.
and is like I refuse to move forward. So I think that's the difference is when and if you're making something that the whole point of it is like, well, let's just go backwards. The audience or the filmmaker wants to go backwards. That's what hits so poorly. But like you're saying, I think Star Wars in my opinion, the reason Star Wars avoids that is because it's so big, it's such a place that you're just telling stories in the place. You obviously will run into things like, look,
right.
There's a Kuat businessman that in Young Jedi Adventures. It's like, is that nostalgia for the Mandalorian armor trilogy of books that came out in the mid 90s? No, it's not nostalgia for that. It's going, this is a cool piece. Let's bring it forward into a new thing.
And the people who catch it will catch it, and those that don't won't. And I think that's really kind of the main issue, I think, with nostalgia. You know, I was on Screen Crush. I was very lucky to be hanging out with those guys, and we talked a little bit about how Star Wars was about Star Wars recently, and things like the Acolyte and Ahsoka. And you haven't seen Skeleton Crew, so we won't talk about that. But it's this concept of just living in the universe versus being about the universe, and so that's where, you know, when you told us early on that you had brought the Kuat Drive Yards into Star Wars from the books because you love that, but it was done in a way that, you know, if, you know, obviously I don't think my 75-year-old father's going to watch Young Jedi Adventures, sorry, but if he did, he wouldn't be like, what are that's very important. I feel like I need to look that up on Wikipedia. It would just be like, oh, that's what the character does, and that's kind of cool. So,
yeah, it's just it's like it's such a big place now. You can use it to tell stories and to do things. And I think like you even saw that with Andor, where Tony was, you know, I think he was making it more in a way of, I need something that does this. What is that already exists in the universe? And then you have the story group and people able to go like, oh, we have this, we have, you know, these pieces exist.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's fun. I think it's because you're always making things and moving forward. You're getting to, I think you avoid nostalgia for that. And I think you also get to address it, like Rebuild the Galaxy is that, you know, like you address it in those ways. Nostalgia is best addressed through comedy because you're able to kind of make fun of yourself in the past instead of do a hey geography where you're just like, look how great we were. You know, it's I think to me the best piece of nostalgia Star Wars has ever done is that, and I don't know if it's legit or a fan trailer, but it's like the history of Luke's lightsaber, and it's like all the people who have held it and carried it through the years, and all this guy, and like there's some like someone's giving a speech over it, like Maz Kanata or whatever, but you're like seeing, and you're like, oh, that and that and that, oh, and you're seeing it all come together. Like that kind of stuff is cool because I do think it's fun to tell audiences, remember all these cool things, you know, but like in sports, when we watch a highlight reel, is that nostalgia or is that just enjoying something that's fun?
Yeah, right. Enjoying something you enjoy, and you know.
Yeah, I went back and watched Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals to be like, what was Michael Jordan? If I watch Michael Jordan, what's he doing? I was like, that turns out it's pretty good. This is pretty good. He does push off against Byron Russell, but like it was pretty good.
Say, and is that the flu game?
No, that's the where he does the step over, but in reality he pushes Russell down to get clear, and then hits the game winner, and you're like. And they just gave it to him, and you know,
because he's Michael Jordan. That's the way.
Right, they're not going to take it from Michael. Yeah.
No, it's
well. I'm going to ask you one more question before we get you out of here, and I kind of primed you ahead of time that this was going to be my second question. I'm stealing from you and your co-hosts at the Yub Nub podcast, which, by the way, if nobody listens to Yub Nub, go do yourself a favor, download it, look it up. Lots of fun, amazing things to listen to there. Yep. But the question for you, Greg, before we get you out of here tonight is, what is yubbing your nub in Star Wars these days?
I got a lot of answers.
Specific thing.
Now I'm like, what did I? I'm gonna tell you one. That's good. Okay, so I was like, what? Because I was like, so much stuff. Oh my gosh, I think if doing Abeloth canon would be so funny. I think the closest anyone's gonna get is like a cave wall and a little picture of Abeloth, and then all of us go like, yeah, and then they go, no, we are not doing a magic bird. or whatever. That's not happening. You guys don't get that. Joris Sabaoth is not showing up, not walking through that door. There's stuff.
With Plagueis.
Yeah, there has to be stuff.
No.
There has to be stuff that we admit as giant fans of the EU. We go, we loved it. It stays in the trade paperback. Thraken Sal Solo is not showing up. Like, the Sun Crusher ship is not showing up. This stuff, I don't think it's showing up. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it is. Who knows? But yeah, oh man, the Yuzhan Vong too. I'm just trying to imagine. Like the first audience that sees a Star Wars movie that they go, this is a Star Trek movie, right? They're fighting an alien race. What's happening here? Who's fighting this war? Yeah. It would be great, but it's there, and then they kill Chewbacca again. See, they can't. There's so many reasons they can't. Gosh, Abeloth. That's what I use to describe to people when they say the books were so much. Like the people you meet, they're like, the books were so great. I love the books. I don't know why they got rid of the books. And I explain Abeloth, and I'm like, did you know that was in the books? And 100% of the time they go, I did not know that.
Really?
Did you know who the Sword of the Jedi was? You remember that whole thing? All things I own and like, but I'm not going to pretend they should be a television show. So I helped a friend take their giant television up their 6th floor walk-up. And then hung out in their apartment. And then they said, have you ever seen this? And they pulled out a record that was Star Wars, and I don't know what the title is. It's like Star Wars and Other Galactic Funk.
By Miko.
And it's by Miko. It's a disco Star Wars record, 1977 printing, which means Miko turned that around fast because it's got real Star Wars sound in it. So I don't really know I don't understand in 77 how he got the sounds and then got them into music and then didn't get sued out of existence. And I'm catching up to this late. Everyone else knows about this. Everyone I texted was like, yeah, we all know.
8-track, Greg. I had it on 8-track.
Okay. Yeah, there it is. So I have that, and I saw it, and I thought this must be a modern mixtape. And then I looked at the back, and it was made in 77. And I thought, and then we put it on, and my kids, it was like they just went, this is Star Wars. But then they're dancing a little bit, because it's disco. They're like, this is Star Wars. And so he gave it to me as a gift for moving his TV. And then I found out that Miko made the Christmas album, which I didn't know. And then also that he made a disco version of the Superman 1 score, which I definitely need to buy because that's incredible.
And there's also a Close Encounters one. And there's also Empire Strikes Back. So
how did this happen? How did this... Can you do this now? Could we go take a new movie and be like, we did it? What? I don't understand how this works.
I think it's a tribute to John Williams in a way, right? In that his music was so powerful. And we've talked about it a bunch of times, and probably even with you, in the 70s and 80s, we can just go turn on Disney Plus right now. I can watch Skeleton Crew episode 1 40 times in a row if I want to. Back then, all I had was the record. All I had was the soundtrack. And I mean, that's why it was amazing to me and so cool for us Gen X Star Wars fans when Duel of the Fates was #1 on MTV Live, right?
On TRL.
Total Request Live, right? Because it was like, it's back, baby. And that's why Miko was able to do those things. And I have to say the Close Encounters one is actually kind of fun. It's really funky. It's a total dance mix. You got to find it. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go check those out, and when we have you back again, it's gonna be we're gonna do clips. We're gonna get a copyright hit because we gotta check these out.
We gotta do a Miko night, but it's. Yeah, I couldn't. I'm not the expert of Star Wars, but when I find something that I had no idea existed, it truly brings me joy, and I could not believe that this was as old as Star Wars gets. Because I have an original score on vinyl that is a 77 pressing, so I don't think it's first edition, but it's from the first year, and I've got that, and I'm very proud of that. But then this was I just was I didn't even know you could do it. It was that was really fun. That was a fun piece of new Star Wars for me. Was doing that, and then I had some friends send me more of the original print assemblies as our friend filmmaker George Lucas would say, test prints of A New Hope, but the early prints, which I am now somehow collecting, like the 4K 77
awesome.
version and the despecialized edition and all of them. And then my kids are just like, I like the Disney Plus one, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah, you can-
and not to get into a whole other rant and use up your whole show's time with my rants, but it is funny as you get older that I'm like, I don't care that you like that one. That's fine.
Right.
Like the only part in it that I don't like is that Han doesn't shoot first, and I showed them the original to be like, just so you know, he's a murderer. To my 6-year-old, that's me. I'm like, just so you know, he killed a guy in cold blood.
I want you to know.
Luigi Solo, he just killed him. But the part that bugs my son about it, that he brings up every single time, is Jabba, you're a wonderful human being. Here's the thing, I showed him the original with the Scottish guy.
Yeah.
I showed him that. I showed him the graphics thing where they put him in, and then I showed him the original movie where it's not in there. So he knows what it is. But every time it comes up, he says he's not a human being.
Yeah.
And he knows it's supposed to be a joke now, but he cannot. It bugs him every time.
It's like
I'm
when,
with him.
yeah,
And
I
honestly,
mean,
my part of that is the same scene, but when he steps on his tail.
I was about to ask you, do you like the tail squelch?
If this is
One
one
of-
Gangster in the Galaxy, Han Solo, who's worse, like, he's not stepping on him for funsies.
right.
No.
He steps. It's prequel coded in that it's like when the Eope farts in
Right.
what's this Jar Jar's face. It's like it's in that era where George was like just like mirthful. Yeah,
Yeah, just go ahead. Just make a fart joke. I don't care.
have a fart in his face. I don't know.
Well,
Oh my gosh.
amazing.
Yeah.
Greg, we always love hanging out with you. We always love talking to you. We did get into kind of the political part of Star Wars at the beginning, and I think, we're fine with that. There's one other person who might have some commentary on it. It'd probably be this guy.
Yeah! Oh, Perrin. Oh my gosh. I gotta. I'm so interested to hear. He's got so much to say. He's got so much to say. There's Coruscant's full. Coruscant's full. People come into Coruscant. They think they can live here just because you're born on Coruscant doesn't mean you can stay on Coruscant.
Yeah, we put that up when Jim was here because it was a key Yub Nub callback. You would not believe how high up the chain I have pitched the idea of Perrin for having a propaganda late night show. I have pitched it to people who could have put it into a television show, and they laughed and seemed not interested.
Probably not.
They texted back, ha 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 ha, and then nothing else, and that was that. But yeah, that's in our canon, in the shared Yub Nub ATG canon.
Yep.
Firtha is out there right now talking about how Palpatine actually has increased efficiency, and actually the core planets are paying more money to support the Outer Rim, so they should be grateful for what we're doing for them.
Back to tariffs, it's taxation again. We're right back at it.
They sleep in separate beds, right? There's no way him and Mon Mothma sleep in the same. That's insane. Might be different rooms.
Yeah. For sure.
They're doing a Lucy and Desi. That's them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Greg, we always love hanging out, laughing, talking with you. Thank you for being here. And next time we see you, we're going to throw down on some Miko remixes. I'm going to find the hip hop one that Bro Axiom uses when they run their music. Yeah. That's a good one too. So there's so much out there. But we always love seeing you. Thank you for taking some time to hang out.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
See you later. And we'll be back in just a minute with more ATG Live. Welcome back to ATG Live, your Thursday night home for all things Star Wars, guests, conversation, speculation, 9/11 connections, apparently, when we have our friends from Yubnub on.
Every time somebody from Yubnub is here, we end up talking about Star Wars and 9/11.
I don't know. I don't even have a comment because there's nothing
You don't want to
say
call it a niche because that feels wrong, but
it doesn't really feel like you want to be known for that. But certainly, no, always a great time with Greg. And I know a lot of you have called or have dialed in because you want to check out the Skeleton Crew conversation. That's going to come up at the top of the hour. We're going to take a deep dive with our Beyond the Barrier show. We're going to record it for the podcast stream. You get to be part of that. You may see some weird behind the scenes stuff because we're doing a recording, but we want you to be a part of it. And if you're a patron, if you just saw that video and you have become a patron, you want to become a patron, there is a link on our Patreon site so that you can call in when we get to that part of the show and you can give us your thoughts. But Nick, there were some news stories this week, so why don't we hit them? Well, Nick, the first story we want to hit tonight is that Star Wars Celebration in Japan is shaping up to be something really special. Lucasfilm has officially announced that Diego Luna, star of Andor and Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, will be among the celebrity guests at Star Wars Celebration Japan coming up next year. The announcement was made via social media alongside a reminder that there are still limited tickets available for the event, which is going to take place in April 18th through the 20th, 2025. In Japan. Luna joins an impressive roster of confirmed guests that include Rogue One co-stars Mads Mikkelsen and Alan Tudyk, with Andor Season 2 set to premiere just 2 days after the event. It's supposed to hit on the 22nd. Celebration Japan is expected to heavily feature content on the series, and fans are even speculating about a potential sneak peek. Nick, I have said that I think we're going to see some sort of event, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Additional guests, if you're thinking about going to Japan, if you're like, you know what, hey, I'm not busy next April, I'm going to go to Tokyo and check out some Star Wars stuff. You're also going to get Manny Jacinto from The Acolyte, Star Wars veteran Tamira Morrison, Daniel Logan, Ashley Eckstein, C-3PO actor Anthony Daniels, and Doug Chang is going to be there. There is Japanese-inspired key art and badge designs already unveiled, showcasing a unique fusion of Star Wars themes and traditional Japanese aesthetics. Attendees can also look forward to updates on The Mandalorian, new casting news, potential announcements regarding Daisy Ridley's movie, and James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, which has been up in the news as well. As more guest announcements and anticipated content comes out over the coming months, you can hang out with us, and we'll make sure to get that to you as soon as we hear from it. Nick, will there be some sort of global Andor release, or is it going to be just something special for the people in Japan? What are your thoughts? We've seen a bunch of sort of premiere events in movie theaters for new shows. What are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the odds, if I were to put some money down, would be on there being a combo event. We saw this when we went to Celebration in Anaheim with Kenobi. They showed the first 2 episodes to those of us that were able to get in. We watched those in that theater together. And then, if I'm not mistaken, they did drop it early a couple hours later for, the wide Disney Plus audience. I could totally see there being a similar situation like that, a projected release. It's going to be the week after. Hey, surprise. Here's a couple episodes. People in Japan got to see it. That feels like a safe bet. It's, like you said, we've gotten lots of dates, even with Skeleton Crew. We've gotten, hey, the show's coming out on Tuesday. Surprise. Here's the first 2 on Monday.
And what's weird about the Skeleton Crew one is that, in talking to Becca Benjamin, who did get some of the free stuff from Star Wars. Hey, Star Wars, give me and Nick a call. We're happy to take stuff. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to go online and beg, but I'll beg here. We can do it. But she pointed out that the release date that was on the swag that they received, it's very funny, Matt. It's probably true. The release date on the stuff they received was already set for the date that it actually dropped on that Monday. So it feels like they knew in advance that they were going to sneak up that date, which is bizarre. I'm going to go the other side, Nick. I'm going to say that they're not going to do anything this time around. And that's because it's the second season. And it's not a premiere in the same sense as Obi-Wan was in the first season of Mando and things like that. There's probably not going to be as much spoiler kind of stuff because I do believe it was Mando season 3 that launched at Celebration in London, and they got to see the first episode and they still held it back for the rest of the real world. So while I would love to see, I'm still a big fan of doing these shows in theaters every week. And I'm going to push that till the very end. But I think that they're going to make that a Celebration exclusive. But that's just my thoughts on that.
100%. And I have to ask this question too, just as a tag on there. You talked about so many guest announcements. There's one that sneaks in there. And with all due respect to our friend Eric Elliott, is at this point Anthony Daniels the Cal Ripken of Star Wars Celebration? Has he missed one? We'd have to go back and do some fact checking. I don't have it on hand.
That's a great question.
But that also says something because he's going to go to Japan. And granted, he's probably going from London. He's not going from Alabama or New Jersey. It may be a little easier to get there. I don't know. But that begs the question, Anthony Daniels showing up at a Celebration. What does that mean for C-3PO? What does that mean for Anthony Daniels? But I wonder if he's missed one.
He did post that tweet. We did a quick video on it a couple of weeks ago where he posted a tweet about how C-3PO he'll always be C-3PO, and I can't remember exactly what the tweet was, but then he pulled it down real quick. So I agree, man. I think
little intrigue.
He might be dropping hints, man. He might be dropping hints.
Never know. Excellent. Well, we've got another story that we want to hit before we get out of our news segment tonight. Details are emerging from the Mando casting. Production on Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian and Grogu wrapped recently. We've talked about that, but casting news continues to surface. The teaser shown at D23 Expo a couple months ago featured Zeb Orrelios, Imperial warlords, and the Shadow Council during The Mandalorian Season 3 seemingly are going to appear in the upcoming film. Meanwhile, just this week, Jeremy Allen White, an actor known for the TV show The Bear, has been reportedly cast as the voice of Rotta the Hutt, a character introduced in the Clone Wars movie. Some of you may know him as Stinky. The film, which is scheduled for release on May 22nd, 2026, will mark finally Star Wars' return to the theaters after a 7-year hiatus. Now, plot details remain under wraps. It has been confirmed that Pedro Pascal's Din Djarin and Grogu will embark on a new adventure. Speculation suggests the story may explore the Shadow Council's response to Moff Gideon's demise. Reported demise. We don't, do we see them dead on camera? And the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, tying into this broader New Republic era narrative that we've seen over the last few years, according to Lateef Crowder. Sorry, easy for me to say. On social media, Pedro Pascal was on set shooting scenes for the movie earlier this week. Adding intrigue, we have heard that Sigourney Weaver, whose casting was revealed earlier this year, will play an undisclosed role. The teaser that was shown at D23 featured Zeb, who is another animated character crossing into live action that we did see in Mando Season 3, a favorite character for many people who love Star Wars Rebels. There's a lot in here. It's interesting that the production is wrapped, but we kind of keep getting casting information. My question for you, Pete, I want to focus on the Jeremy Allen White Rotta the Hutt thing.
Yeah.
This is not an original idea. I saw somebody else post this earlier online this week. If I remembered who it was, I would credit them. I'm sorry, I can't. Is this real, or is this the kind of thing where you're testing leaks in your production to say, hey, let's put this out there and see what happens?
Yeah, and I'm gonna look up who it is because I know exactly who it is. I know her name. I can't remember her. Hold on, I'm just
actually it was Laura from Force Toast.
That's who it was.
Shout out to Laura from Force Toast.
Yep,
it was her tweet that I saw that asked that question. So I'm asking you that question.
I don't know. I mean, it seems a little bit bizarre. I mean, there was also the connection to the Bear from Andor, right? I don't watch the Bear, but one of the characters in Andor was one of the actors from the Bear. So I don't know. It's not that far fetched. It definitely feels like the kind of thing where they would try to figure out who the leak is. But everybody jumped on it, and I don't know. The whole thing just seems weird to me. But it's something that Filoni would bring that character back. I just don't know how or why. I mean, again, I guess maybe I was gonna say maybe he was trying to. Maybe it has to do with maybe Boba Fett. Maybe we're gonna get a little Book of Boba Fett connection.
So it also creates another question, which is, we have Jabba the, and I'll be perfectly clear as a Star Wars fan. If I need to turn my card in, I will. I'm aware of Rotta the Hutt. I don't really remember like the storylines from Clone Wars. I know the character, I know the whatever, but most of the Hutts that we've encountered and experienced, they speak Huttese. They don't speak basic or English or whatever. So then does this become an I Am Groot situation? And we've got Jeremy Allen White just like grunting some syllables in a VO booth so that we can say he did it, because Daniel Craig was a stormtrooper in The Force Awakens.
True.
I don't know.
It could very well be one of those. He spent 4 hours working for Lucasfilm that day and just went in and went.
Is it stunt casting? I guess is the question. Is this a stunt casting situation?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how they bring Rotta the Hutt back in. I mean, other than, again, what's starting to happen is like they did a really great job of keeping so much of this under wraps while they shot it. We have no idea what's happening with the story, but we've now seen a couple of rumors that Fennec Shan and Boba Fett might be in it. So there you could have your connection. I don't know. A movie needs to have some real drama and some real epic plot line to it. But I don't know. I'm just so like when I saw it,
very intriguing.
Yeah, when I saw it, I literally thought this is a joke. And then I saw everybody pick up on it, and I thought, well, maybe it's not a joke. I don't know. It's confounding. It's confounding.
Yep.
I think it'd be the best way to
put it. It is.
Well, there was some more news this week, but there was also Skeleton Crew, and we want to get to that with all of you hanging out with us. For those of you who may or may not know, we have a podcast called Beyond the Barrier, which is our recap of the Skeleton Crew, and we are going to record that episode right after the next break. You're going to be a part of it. We're going to be watching the chat to see what you have to say. And if you are a patron, you have the link. And if you want to dial in, feel free to join us. We're going to try to take some of your calls later at the end. But it's unusual for us here at ATGLive. It is definitely a recap, a deep dive, a talking about details about the show. We're going to spend the next, 20 to 50 to 60 to 100 minutes talking about it. Who knows how long it's going to be, but we're excited that you're going to join us. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to kick off our new show called Beyond the Barrier.
This is proof right here, guys. If you're watching this, you will not meet nicer people. Whoop, I'm going to point up.
I think I'm the only person who's ever written Star Wars for film, television, books, and comics.
Rogue One was awesome. I love the Han Solo movie, and then, of course, I love The Mandalorian.
It's like, that's Big Darklighter's helmet. So how did you know? Because I'm a nerd.
We cast you, and I told casting, I said, get Earl Brown to be Tonti. Holy shit, I've recreated Deadwood in space.
The galaxy isn't growing to push people out. It's growing to let more people come in and find their love so that it's able to continue and create this connective tissue.
There's Mark Hamill, there's Harrison Ford, there's Carrie Fisher. We're doing Star Wars.
Yeah, and the Rancor bit hit, and I went running out of the theater screaming my head off. you know, and then you're just sitting with her as she's making dinner, you know, outside of an abandoned AT-AT, you know, at AT-AT, sorry.
I placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of this 2 unit.
You know, you have people like Favreau, Filoni, who are like, you know, super fans, like everyone on this Zoom.
Cassie and Jim on the beach, and people are like, no. I can literally hear people that go, no.
But, you know, I mean, I was doing my research, and Wedge was obviously a character that you had to use.
Spears never left me. Again, we're such soulmates that her being older and me being older was exactly where we were meant to be.
Coming back to a show that I dearly love and admire, so thanks for having me.
Because Darth Vader was the scariest thing that had ever happened to anybody, and this guy literally looks like the devil.
You don't do that. There is no trying.
I have had the best time ever on Around the Galaxy. Thank you so much.
That was one of the greatest intros ever. That was awesome. Oh my gosh, I have found my home. I have found my people.
So close. So close. There we go. All right. There it is. All right. Well, ahoy there, Star Wars adventurers, and welcome to episode 2 of Beyond the Barrier, exploring the mysteries of Skeleton Crew. I am your host, Pete Fletzer, and along with my co-host and co-pilot, my Star Wars first mate, Mr. Nick Mielke. Each week, we will guide you through the twists, the turns, and the treasures of the Disney Plus Star Wars show, Skeleton.
You are right. Oh, Captain, my Captain. And tonight we are diving deep into episode 3 of Skeleton Crew, which is titled Very Interesting as an Astrogation Problem. And we've got an exciting show lined up. And here's what you're going to be able to expect.
That is right. In the scuttlebutt, we're going to kick things off with our first reactions to the episode using just one word to sort of set the stage.
After that, we're going to navigate through what we call plotting the course. This is breaking down the major story beats, following the map, the path, the journey, and we're going to talk about those beats and discuss what stood out to us.
And then after that, we're going to go into what we call buried treasure, where we're going to dig up Easter eggs, references, and hidden gems, things you might have missed along the way.
Yes. Finally, after that, in Buccos and Codgers, that's you guys, our patrons. We're going to hand it over to you, our patron supporters. We want to hear your thoughts, your theories, your hot takes, the things that you saw in these episodes as we go through this every week.
And if you're catching this on the podcast stream, you are missing out on all the fun live action. Join us live every Thursday night. We have couple days after the episode airs, and you can become a patron at patreon.com/the SSW network so that you can be a part of the show. Not only can you hang out with us in real time, but we're also going to give you a link so that we can take your calls live and talk about what you have to say about Skeleton Crew.
And there is one warning. Here be spoilers. And we will hold nothing back every week as we dive into the plot points, the details, the Easter eggs, and all of our wildest expectations, not expectations, maybe expectations or speculations. All of that to say, if you're tuning in on the podcast, if you're tuning in right now live, if you haven't watched episode 3 yet, this is your chance to take a pause, go check it out, and then come back and join us again.
Exactly. So grab your maps, raise your solar sails, and join us on this epic journey. But first, let's hit the scuttlebutt. Nick, the scuttlebutt, every week we are going to give our first impression, that one word that you used to describe how you felt or what the show meant, or just give me episode 3 in one word. Go.
I'm going to give you a hyphenated one word if I can. My
yeah.
hyphenated one word is wide-eyed. I came into this episode. I was hooked last week. That was my word. This week I was wide-eyed. I was ready for this adventure. I wanted to see how they were going to get out. I mean, when we get to Kim and the little moon that they're on, all that stuff, like, this show is continuing to connect with my inner 80s child, and I'm just watching it like I did as a kid, sitting on my knees in front of the TV, wide-eyed, locked in, ready to go.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a word that is, I don't know, it feels like a cop-out, but it's the only thing that kept hitting me over and over after I watched this episode, and then when I watched it the second time. And I'm going to get away with 2 words by making it a hashtag, and I'm going to call it hashtag Star Wars, because to me, this was the most Star Wars show that I have seen since the Marshall episode of The Mandalorian. It did everything right. It brought all the right pieces of Star Wars together into, what was it, 37 minutes long. And it just, and the great thing was, the difference between this and the Marshall was on Tatooine and was Boba Fett armor and really went for the things we recognize, the things we've seen. This did it by just sort of taking me back to that time when I saw The Empire Strikes Back or even Return of the Jedi, in that it was new Star Wars. It was that adventure, the feeling that I had, but it was all right there. And I was so ready for it. And I absolutely loved that. So, well, that's the scuttlebutt. Now we're going to take a look at the show beat by beat, talk about some things that happened, and then sort of talk about our feelings about it along the way. We're going to watch the chat, see what you have to say about it while we go. But Nick, let's plot the course. Well, this was episode number 3, and it was called Very Interesting as an Astrogation Problem, directed by David Lowery, who also directed episode 2, and it had a runtime of 48 minutes. No, it didn't. It was 37 minutes. I'm sorry. Yes. I was close. I was only off by 11 minutes. The Disney Plus description was: a mysterious stranger offers to help our heroes. Before we dig into it, I just want to say, it struck me that we didn't really get Jude Law at all in the first 2 episodes until this one, and it felt perfect. It didn't feel like we missed him, but he felt like he should be there, which I think is a tribute to Jude Law and probably why he got a star on the Walk of Fame this week.
For sure. Yeah, you get the teeny tiny tease at the beginning of the first episode, right as he gets mutinied. Although technically we don't know that at that point because he's got the helmet on. And then we get him as the closing kind of teaser cliffhanger at the end of episode 2, steps out of the shadows. Hey, I can help you, wink and a nod, and we're off waiting for another week.
Absolutely. And then this episode starts, but this one starts on at Aden, and it gives us a look at this suburban utopia hellscape. Honestly, I mean, it felt so sterile. It felt a lot like where we saw Cyril Karn live in Andor, but then we cut through all that. We see a lone security robot walking through the streets, and then we get to the cul-de-sac where Fern's mother lives, and all the parents are there. And it we see what I found a little bit jarring, and Nick, I don't know if you picked up on it the first time. We're literally in Wilhelm's what's his name? Is it Will whatever Wim's father's name?
Yeah, Wim's dad. Totally blanking. Go ahead.
Yeah, but we're in his head in that all the conversation happening around him is muffled. And he's, I'm checking the volume. I'm checking to make sure that I'm watching it right and everything. And it was a great effect to show how bothered Wim's father is by this entire thing. Wendell. Thank you.
Yes, Wendell.
Yeah.
Great name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, it was such a good parenting moment. This is going to be one for anybody who knows this show, who knows us. West Wing. There's an episode of the West Wing in season 4, 3 or 4. No, season 4, at the end of season 4, something major happens and the president goes through the same thing. the audio drops, he's in his head, he's connected, he's disconnected. And it felt very much like that, which adds a lot of emotional weight, certainly as a parent watching this episode. And these are parents whose kids are gone, and they all have different. The thing I loved was all the different reactions.
Yeah.
You've got Fern's mom, who's like, it's fine. Trust the system. They'll be back soon.
Right.
Wendell's on to something. Like, he was the one out in the woods. He's seen some stuff. And then you've got KB's moms who, they have a different concern and thought. We don't really get a lot of Neil connection. The parents are there, but it's different. And you and I are parents, and we know other people with kids. And this is exactly what would happen if something happened to 4 kids that we all know together. There'd be 5 different reactions from 4 sets of parents.
Yeah.
So that hit me, from a parenting standpoint, as very realistic of everybody handling the situation in a different way.
Yep. And then the doorbell rings, and at the door is one of those frightening security droids.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, okay, what are we going to do? And essentially they say, the supervisor says, we can't contact the Republic. It's just essentially it's protocol. Nick, who's the supervisor? Or do you want to save that for your theories later?
I'll jump onto it right now.
All right.
I think the supervisor is also a droid. I think the supervisor is like a battle droid. This is like a maintain the status quo kind of situation. This is a planet controlled by, at what point, the Old Republic, the Empire, whoever's, maintaining this grip and this control.
Right.
And it's kind of one of those, like, don't ask questions. It's Pleasantville. What's outside of Pleasantville? Don't ask any questions.
Yep.
Truman Show. Take your pick. We've seen all these different shows and movies over the year. But I think about Clone Wars, the final season of Clone Wars, those opening episodes, Anakin and Obi-Wan are on the bridge, and it's the commando battle droid, whatever it's called. I forget. It's got the flat top visor. And they're like, when you take that one out, they all stop. The command droid or whatever. Again, terrible fan. Don't remember the name. But I think the supervisor is like, it's the Great Oz. It's the thing behind the curtain. And I think the droids are doing the business that they've been programmed to keep this society in check, this planet in check. So I will be very surprised if the supervisor turns out to be, Governor Price or some other something.
Yeah.
I think the supervisor is a higher up droid that's running this system that is kind of very finely balanced.
I like that, and it is freaking scary. It's a sinister way to tell a story, and I love it. So after that, we then see Jod and the kids making their escape. They're breaking out, and the kids are questioning Jod. And this is one of the things that I loved about this episode, and I love about the writing that I'm seeing, is the kids question Jod. They say, well, why did you escape sooner if you could have used the Force to take the key? And he says, what's the point if I don't have a ship? What's the point of setting myself free if I don't have a ship? Which is a great answer. Same question when they land on the moon a little bit later, and they say, why didn't you park closer? Because all of us are thinking, yeah, why didn't he park closer? Sort of like, why the hell did Orson Krennic park his ship at Jyn Erso's parents' house, like miles away? That makes no sense. But in this case, Fern picked up on it. Was like, yeah, he's hiding from something. But I love that they asked that question, and he had a good answer. But he reassures them that he knows somebody who can help them out and help them get home. They sneak out through the crowded part of the bar. I thought that was an interesting thing. Did I read too much into it, Nick, or was that just kind of a cool choice that he gave the kids? You can either go down the empty hallway, or you can go through with the kids, or with all the other life forms. Did you make anything more out of that than it was, or?
I liked it because I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you go the empty way, you're going to be noticed. There's plenty of opportunities to blend in. I'll be perfectly honest. When he said that, the scene that clicked in my head is the scene in Hook when Robin Williams is trying to get across like the pirate island to go try and sneak and grab the hook or whatever it is he's supposed to do. And he's still dressed in like slacks and a dress shirt. And so they're like throwing a cloak on him and a hat. And they're like, they even tell him, they're like, drag your left leg or your arm's dead at your side, drool out of the side of your, like, be a pirate, blend in.
Yep.
We've seen this kind of stuff because we saw it in Kenobi when they escape, and Leia's under the coat, the big trench coat, and everybody lost their mind over it. But you're like, there's chaos and there's people walking. People don't pay attention to people. We see this every day in real life.
That's true.
You have a better opportunity to take 5 people and spread out through a crowd than to have 5 people huddled up in an empty hallway, because all it takes is one person to go, what are you all doing here?
Right.
But if it's a pirate island, a port, craziness going on, it's there's a kid over there. Wait, there's a kid over there. By the time you start going, why have I seen 4 kids in the last 4 minutes? It's too late. They've gotten to where they need to go. So I thought that worked well. And I wanted to come to your other point is, in the writing of this show, this isn't that show where kids talk like grown-ups, because sometimes we get that in some of these big IP shows. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, kids are doing what kids do. I have 4 kids. You have 2 kids. We're around all of our friends who have kids. Kids call you on your stuff. And these kids are going, what the hell, man? Why didn't you try to get out of here already? Like, that's what a kid would do. And these kids talk like kids. They act like kids. And I think that's another thing that makes this show so endearing for me is it feels real. It doesn't feel like a kid giving a monologue about hyperspace trade lanes and, oh, I knew this because I read it in a book.
Right.
It's a kid going, wait, I get to get in that thing and shoot a cannon? Hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I think that's really illustrated well when they're in the little ferry going over, and Jod leaves his gun on the bench, and Neil just picks it up and is looking at a gun. And then it's funny because it tells you everything. That's what's so great about the directing and the acting in the show and the writing. You learn so much about the characters just by how they react to things. The way Neil picks up and realizes it's a gun and kind of puts it down is like, nope, this isn't for me. Similarly, later on in the show when Wim gets in the guns on the ship, and he's thrilled, he's like excited, beaming. This is like this is what I've been waiting for. So it's those sort of subtle things that are so different about this show and so well done that it's easy to overlook them, but it's why the show is working, I think, so well for a lot of people. So as they're on their way to get to the ship, I haven't seen many, it's funny, you do the show a couple days after all the other Easter egg shows and things. Not a lot of people have picked up on the fact that when they're coming out, when Jod sees the ship, which is the Onyx Cinder, we haven't heard that name yet, but if you got the Lego set, that's what it's called. When he sees the ship, he says, not that one. Like, he recognizes it. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Like, he knows that particular ship. So I'm curious if that means anything, or it could just be that, again, something I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. The Onyx Cinder has those gray and light gray stripes, like a lot of the other pirate ships had, like they had in the pirate ships in Mando season 3. So maybe he just recognizes it as a pirate ship, or maybe he recognizes that specific ship.
So that was something that stood out to me, and I wanted to talk about that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
I didn't read it as he knew it. Oh, you're in the Onyx Cinder. This isn't the Black Pearl. Right. I read it as that's an old ship, and it goes back to the mysteries of Ad-Ad. What's going on with this planet? Something that's that old. If you were told, hey, we're going to go on a cruise, and you show up at a harbor on the coastal New Jersey, and there's a tall ship there, not a Carnival Cruise Line, you'd be like, that thing, that old ship. I feel like it's that was the connection I made with it, which was him going. It's kind of Leia looking at the Falcon going, that hunk of junk. That was what it felt like to me.
That's great. That's a really good way to look at it. So cool. So they do finally get to the ship. And Leia Fern, who says a Leia line, that was too easy, essentially, right? And kind of like, I don't trust that. But as they're getting ready to go, they realize that they need to retrieve SM-33. And Jod says they can leave without the droid, but ultimately the kids show their loyalty and say, we're going to go get him if you don't. And he says, all right, well, I'll go get him. And during his attempt to, I love his, what's his name? S-37 something. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. But during his attempt to get SM-33 out, first of all, there were a couple Easter eggs in there, which we'll get to in a couple minutes, but he catches the attention of an Ishi Tib. We haven't really seen too many of them. We saw one in Ahsoka on the bridge of the Republic ship. But
the one in the beginning of Mando season 3, when he goes to when he kills the people in the meat packing room, and then he goes to get his bounty. That was initiative in that.
Right, he's got the head in the bag. That was cool. It was interesting too, because again, another line. I felt like that, and maybe that's why I went with hashtag Star Wars for my description of this episode, because between Jod doing the Jedi trick that Kenobi did to make the noise to pull the attention of the guards, to whereas Jod is leaving in the Ishitib, who was voiced by
Alfred Molina,
Satipo from Indy,
or Dr. Octopus, depending on how old you are.
Right. Well, he says as Jod says, I'm just gonna get out of here. And the line that he says is, well, that's the real trick, isn't it? Which, of course,
Big Han Solo all over.
Big Han Solo vibes. Yep, 100%. So, of course, a chaotic chase ensues. I love we cut back to the kids who are just sort of arguing as to whether or not he's really a Jedi. Even like there's a million ways you can make it. You can move a key. You can use repulsor lifts. You can use mirrors. You can use string, magnets. I just loved that whole interaction between the kids. It was very much, you know what it reminded me of, and this may be a stretch, but to me it reminded me of the scene in E.T. where Elliot is fighting with the kids while they're playing D&D, and they're just kind of like just arguing. Like it's mundane, childish arguments, but that's what they do. Yep. So he gets his way back to the ship, and I love that you could see the battle starting outside the ship as they're talking. He gets on board. And then we had, again, maybe one of the most Star Warsy things that I can recall in a long time, of him trying to figure out the way to get out. He's still connected to the fuel lines, and he makes a giant mess of things as they're leaving. Nick, what did you think of that scene? To me, it was a great Star Wars scene.
Everything about this scene, like, it just kept checking boxes. It's like if you went down a list and it was like this thing and this thing and this thing, and it's like Oprah giving out gifts. You get a toy and you get a memory, and because there were so many things in there. The Han Solo line, that was the thing that immediately I was like, oh, like I think I actually said something out loud, like, oh, he said the thing. Like, it felt like one of those. The conversation about how did he do it? Could it be magnets? Could it be string? Could it be whatever? I thought about Kenobi, when you have Haja, who's played by Kumail Nanjiani, pretending to be a Jedi, and he's got all these little tricks. Like, it wasn't necessarily, maybe it was intended to remind us of that. It reminded me of that because I watched Star Wars.
Right.
The fuel line connected to the thing. It felt like Force Awakens when Poe and Finn are trying to escape in the TIE fighter at the beginning. They're connected to that docking thing. They can't get away. But it also is just, every drop of it is fun. The quips, like the little lines, like the way this is written. I love words. I tend to use too many of them when I'm trying to express thoughts. I kind of exist in that territory of, like, if you use 5 words when you could have used 20, you're not trying hard enough. Like, the little side quotes, and Jude Law is so good at this, and the kids are so good at this. Again, not just that they sound like kids, but the acting from these 4 children portraying these 4 characters. Like, it's so natural. It doesn't feel stilted. It feels fun, and it's these little bits of, like, of course this is happening right now. Of course we can't get out of here when we want to. It just, again, it just feeds into the vibe of the whole show.
For sure. You're right. And again, that's what's capturing that really well done 80s movies, the Goonies, E.T., all those. So they narrowly escape. And while they're sitting there talking, Jod is eating something. The kids are hungry, puts it down. And one of the things that I have to call out, because I thought it was an interesting piece to notice, was Jod has no love for droids. Very Din Djarin of that. In fact, when he finishes his bowl of food, he puts it down and he tells SM-33 to clean it up. And you can definitely sense there's some tension there. You could tell he didn't like going back to go get him. You could tell he didn't like seeing the droids in the in that room where he had to go get them there. His comment at first when they say we have to get SM-33 is, he's just a droid, right? There's no, or not he, it's just a droid. So he definitely has some issues there, and I don't know if that's sort of an insight into his character, but it certainly tells the difference between the kids and him when it comes to loyalty and things like that. But then we start to really, what's interesting is the pace at which some of the mysteries are starting to be explored. Whether we have answers or not is another thing, but they're starting to explore the questions that we as the audience has. When Neil says, did we really think that there's treasure at home? And most of them, they all say no, but Neil then wonders out loud if it might have something to do with the great work. And that leads the kids to really start piecing the pieces together, recognizing that their parents have these boring administrative jobs and that they're focused on money, and Wim pulls he's got his credits, and they're looking at it just as John walks in. Do you want to comment on any of that piece of the conversation?
I do. As a hardcore longtime lover of The Sopranos, I think I have decided that Aten is a money laundering planet for the benefit of Emperor Palpatine and the First Order.
It's the bada bing of.
It is the bada bing. They are running money through this planet. They have a whole group of people, bureaucrats, whoever they need to bring in money, send it out, whatever they're doing. This is very Star Wars in itself, because what did we jokingly complain about in the 90s? And then as time went on, in the prequels, it was about trade routes and taxation.
Right.
This isn't unfamiliar for Star Wars. So I think this planet, the treasure, because you have these, scumbag bartenders and pirates and whoever at Port Borgo going, that's not real. That's a mystery, a treasure untold. Right. Treasure means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But if the general knowledge is that's where the money is, that planet is Wall Street, but as a planet, or that planet is, I don't know, somewhere where there's lots of money. I think that's what it is. And I think their parents are, again, being led by this autonomous droid system that receives a program and instructions. And, part of this is going to feed into, as you said, I think recently when you were on Screen Crush, the wider narrative of, what happens in the sequel trilogy era and this era post, after Return of the Jedi.
Yep. Yeah. I do like how they're kind of bringing it together without overtly doing it. I think that's kind of what we're starting to see here, which is great. A little later, all the kids are asleep. Again, this was a great kind of something that was so much what a child would do, right? When John says, you guys got to get some sleep, and Fern says, I'm not tired. And the next scene you see her just zonked out, right? Practically drooling. But all the kids are asleep except KB. And when John walks in, she says to him, she's calculated the odds of him being a Jedi. And John replies that not everything can be calculated. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. And then he uses the Force, or appears to use the Force, to turn off some lights, maintaining the question, keeping it going. Now might be a good time to ask you, Nick, do you think he's a Jedi? What do you think his story is?
I don't think he's a Jedi. I think he's a Force user. That's what I've settled on. He has said now, and maybe this is a red herring, maybe this is a way for him to cover for himself.
Right.
He's used some little phrases and expressions that feel very Yoda, very Jedi training like.
Right.
The distance between you and the key is an illusion. There was a couple in these, in this episode, things that felt like that little Confucius say, little nuggets of wisdom, that kind of thing. But I think at the end of the day, I think he is a survivor, a chameleon who has Force abilities that he's figured out. And that's allowed him to kind of be this scoundrel who can do. He's Ezra. He's Ezra Bridger. Yeah. Ezra had the ability to know, ooh, I need to run now. I need to do this kind of thing. And if KG says it, maybe Hondo taught him some things he learned from Ezra. I love the idea that he's a Force user. He doesn't have to be a Jedi. That's something that we have not explored a lot of in Star Wars overall.
Yeah, and I think it was hinted at in the sequel trilogy we've seen a little bit of it here and there, that you don't have to be
Broom
Joey,
Boy.
but you can be force sensitive. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, maybe he's not Broom Boy. Maybe he's not. Okay. So the crew finally arrives at the moon. One of the things that I just loved was Wim playing on the cargo lift. He's just playing. It's like it's a big giant toy. The ship is a big giant toy to him.
Yeah, she says, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
he's like, "It's fun.
It's fun. I'm playing." And again, as I mentioned before, John lands far away, and Fern gets it. Fern's like, no, he's trying to hide the ship. He's trying to be kind of cagey with it, and he admits to the kids that the person that they're going to meet, or the creature they're going to meet, he doesn't always trust, and he had to have a very interesting conversation, similar to what we talked about with Greg a little bit earlier, about a joke that the kids don't get, or in this case, it was a phrase the kids don't get. He says, "She'll stab you in the back," and they thought like that literally meant that she'll stab them in the back. But so it was an interesting sort of life lesson for the kids, and it showed a moment too of him kind of a little twinkle in his eye of, yeah, I kind of care about these kids in a way, right? So finally they get up, they cross this moon, and some of the most beautifully shot, I'm sure it was the volume, but it was absolutely beautiful silhouette against the planet while they're on the moon, which apparently has atmosphere, which is fine. I don't care. It's Star Wars. I'm not going to get into the scientific aspects of it. But as they walk across, one thing, and when they landed, one thing I noticed was the music. It was very 1950s sci-fi, which I felt was really very cool. They walk across the desert. They're met by a handful of the greeting droids, the telltale droids from Jabba's palace, just basically the eyes on the stalks. And but all this time, we recognize that Kim, who they're going to meet, has been talking to somebody about being prepared to capture him, and she says that she will delay him as long as possible. And makes sense. And this is where we hear a name that we haven't heard yet. It's the third name for this character, Crimson Jack. Nick, what do we know about the name Crimson Jack?
Crimson Jack. Oh, Crimson Jack, you scoundrel, you. Crimson Jack is a name and a character from old Star Wars comic books. I don't know how old, because I don't read Star Wars comic books, but as I was watching some clips, seeing some things, I believe this is actually from the original, like early 1977-78 run of the original Marvel Star Wars comic books.
Yep.
I know nothing about the character. I did not have time to do a little deeper dive, a deeper dig, other than he has like the old, I call it like the old British boxer mustache, like the guy that's got both fists out, and it comes down. It's from the from the side chops up through the mustache, no beard underneath, like that good connecting point. Like this is a scoundrel rapscallion, if you will.
Right.
But this is a name that has existed in other Star Wars media in the past. So it could be, an Easter egg. It could be a throwback. It could be something for people our age that actually read the comics. But at this point, we have a character in a main character in a show that has had 3 different names.
Yep.
Captain Silvo, Jod Nanawood, and Crimson Jack. So who are you really, sir?
Who are you? Yes. And so they get in there, and then Kim boasts. Kim is this little owl cat creature, which is kind of a throwback to all the great, cool little wise old owl characters that have appeared in things like Clash of the Titans and all of those sort of things. But she's not truly an owl, because she's got like cat features, but a really interesting, and Star Wars.com today said that it's a character that has not had its race identified, or its species identified yet, which is cool. I don't need to know it. I think she's very cool. Her voice was recognizable, but wasn't. I did some research on the actress who did it, and I couldn't find anything that, like I said, oh, there's the connection. But one of the things she did say in that recognizable voice is that she has trinkets and tokens from 1,000 worlds, and Fern says there's 1,000 worlds. So this again is a little bit of insight into how we get some even better insight, but the first sort of look at how protected the children are, how little they know about the Star Wars universe, the universe that they live in. She starts asking the children about with John. They explain that they're looking for Atten, and she is excited. She rushes to go get more information. She brings back a scroll, and she reveals that Atten has been purposely hidden from the galaxy. And she says that there's no map to Atten, and explains to them that it is one of the jewels of the Old Republic, 9 planets hidden, but they were all destroyed long ago, except for one, which was Atten. Last piece I'll say about this, and then Nick, I want to get your thoughts on what this all means. She starts asking the kids to get some details, trying to figure out how to get there, how to find it on the map. And one of the kids says they've learned about Coruscant and Alderaan at school, in which she says, Alderaan missed the war, did you? I thought that was a fantastic line, because it was a comical way of reminding us who watched Star Wars. We knew what happened to Alderaan. The kids didn't. And she started to piece it all together. Nick, from what we learned about this, how does this play into your theory? And what do you think? How does this tie into the greater Star Wars universe?
I think the tone we keep hitting on is this is a planet lost / frozen in time. There's a barrier. It's isolated. I mean, honestly, I think the example I keep coming back to the most is the Truman Show. If anybody's ever watched the Truman Show, Jim Carrey, he's raised in this like contained bubble, controlled life, narrative, all those things. And this is what that feels like.
Yep.
This society has been, everything they get is controlled. It's state-run media, whether it's the Republic, the Empire. They say in that opening scene when the parents are together, we should appeal to the Republic. They don't say the Old Republic. They also don't say the New Republic. They say the Republic very specifically.
Yep.
So this is a society frozen in time. These kids have heard of Alderaan because Alderaan was a significant planet, but they haven't heard that Alderaan got blasted to smithereens.
Yep.
And so it feeds into, there is something sketchy with this planet. What is its purpose? What is the role that it fills in this greater overall Star Wars galaxy narrative, for sure?
Yep. So Kim is continuing to try to figure out how to narrow down out of the thousands of planets, the millions of planets, how to find it. Then she sees Fern's backpack, and she sees some symbols on there, which she decodes, and she starts working it all out, and she says something like, "Oh, yes." And he says, "Did you figure it out?" And she implies, no, not yet. So, and then that's when Jod recognizes that she's stalling and discovers her communicator, which has been open the whole time. And we learn that there's some X-Wings inbound, and Kim tells the kids to run, but not before KB checks to see if she's okay, because they blast out. Jod does a little bit of sort of makes a mess so they can get out the door. KB checks on Kim, who says, "Trust your head," and offers her that if she ever needs Kim, she can reach out to her. She can do that. And then the kids run away with Jod, and Kim seems a little bit concerned that they're leaving, but not so much so that she continue. I found that was an interesting sort of concern about the kids. Hey, because what is it? Kim asked them, do you trust him? And all KB says is, he's gotten us this far, but I don't trust him, which is an interesting, perplexing situation to be in, right? If this person has saved your life and helped you get closer to home, but I still don't trust him. So what do I do? And again, not to get too deep, but it's an interesting spot for a child to be in, right? I don't trust this person. They haven't hurt me yet, but I don't think they're good for me. And that's a tough spot for a kid to be in. So
it's a very tough spot.
Yeah. But it was interesting because Kim also knew that she said, "Did he tell you to trust your gut?" Like, she knows Crimson Jack's way of doing things, and KB, recognized that she knew what he had asked her. So, but they do get back to the ship, and the kids confront Jod, and Fern brings in SM-33 to kind of press him a little bit further, and John admits finally that he's not a Jedi. He says, well, I never said I was.
Right.
A really kind of Han Solo-y way out of it, right? He proposes a deal to them. He says that he'll do the right thing and maybe get a reward. And the kids, and then he says, I'll be your partner. And the kids say, you're not going to be a partner. You're going to work for us. And then John reluctantly agrees. Nick, what did you think of that interplay at the ship and the way the kids responded? And not just from a story perspective, but also from a production, direction, and acting perspective.
It continues to drive plucky kids lost in a galaxy. It can't just be, oh, this is how Goonies happened. This is how Space Camp happened. This is how, all these movies that we watched as kids that when we were younger, like they have agency, they have some spunk. Fern's kind of the leader, Wim's in for the adventure, Neil's our careful, calculated, and KB's a little bit of our wild card.
Yeah.
They're all out there doing something, but they also have their head on their shoulders, which I love. They're paying attention, even coming from this bubble, secure, safe planet. They're going, wait, something's funny here. And I think that's such a true attribution to, again, the nature of who kids are.
Yep.
As I've raised my kids, as I've watched other kids, like kids will call you on your stuff. Kids will go, what do you mean? And even if it's literal, they're going to ask the question, go, what do you mean? You're like, no, that's not what I mean. Here's what that means. And that, it's partially genuine and earnest, but it's also self-defense. It's also a way to, protect themselves. So I think it's fantastic. And I think it's the highlight of the show at this point is these kids and these actors. Full credit to these actors who are playing these roles.
Yep. Well, to escape this moon, they need to get to the other side where there's daylight before they can jump into hyperspace. So John hands the controls over to Neil, and he puts Fern and Wim on the guns and has KB handle all the coordinates for hyperspace. When Wim gets, as I just said before, when Wim gets in the gunning in the gun spot, he's excited. It's like this is what he's been waiting for, and then he hits an X-wing that's in pursuit. And he's just like, it's Luke Skywalker when he got the first TIE fighter. He said, I got him. And the funny part, again, kids being kids, Fern said, that was my shot. But it was really cool to see them kind of fight through and fight to get out the way they did. And so just the directing, the way we see Wim in the bubble of the gun, and just the wide-eyed excitement on his face. They do, of course, barely escape. They get out there and back on the X-Wings come in. They land by Kim, and they said that they didn't engage because they didn't want to hurt the children, which was interesting. And the pilot says, where were they headed? And Kim says cryptically, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. And then they end the season. What did you think of those X-Wings? Are they Republic X-Wings?
You know what I thought. You know what I thought about those X-Wings. You know who.
Yeah, who we expected to see.
I fully expected, and not fully expected. There was that part of me, 50-50, that was like, ooh, I hope Carson Teva is one of these pilots. And at the same time, I went, he doesn't have to be every X-Wing pilot.
Right.
So at the end of the day, these were unidentified X-Wing pilots out on patrol, which also does track with this New Republic era, this post Return of the Jedi. You've got pilots out there, and some of them may be working for government. Some of them may be free agents. We don't know. I could go buy at a state auction a retired state trooper car or a retired police car. So I could go free agent myself out there. Maybe that's what these guys are doing. We don't know. They could be private security, but it's fun to see an X-Wing. It's always fun to see an X-Wing. To see a chase, to see some shots fired. And, I think, again, also, and maybe I'll say for these first 3 episodes, every one of them has ended on a cliffhanger-y kind of situation.
Right.
Or not even, I won't say a cliffhanger. They've ended at the right time. The endings have been perfect all 3 episodes so far.
Yep, it hasn't felt like. I mean, that was one of the problems with Ahsoka and one of the problems with Acolyte. It was like, oh, we have to make this into 2 episodes. So
wait, we're done now. Like it felt like weird cuts.
And to your point too, it did feel like a lot of those 70s and 80s shows that we liked, where it would end and you'd be like, that's the whole story. Like this was the whole story. They got out of jail and they escaped and they found out where they need to go next. They had a little adventure along the way. And, if the series ended here, obviously there would be a lot of unanswered questions, but it could,
it could.
All we know is that they're on their way to the next thing. So
it's not quite the Dukes of Hazzard. The General Lee is frozen midair as it's jumping the creek, and they say, "Let's see what happens next week."
Right,
it's not quite that extreme.
Not quite that extreme, but yes, enough to make you definitely want it to come back for sure.
Yes.
Well, that's the way that episode went. That was the beat by beat. We got a lot to look forward to next week, but there are some Easter eggs and some buried treasure that we want to talk about real quick. All right, Nick. Well, there were a couple of things that we saw. Why don't we kind of go back and forth like we did before, and just kind of see what we got. We'll go till we run out. It's one of those things where the first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, not a lot of Easter eggs. I watched the second time, I was like, wow, there was a lot more stuff in there. The stuff that the first one that I'll throw out there was Wim used the Obi-Wan quote about that the Jedi are the defenders of justice. Keepers of peace in the galaxy. He says everybody knows that, but what was interesting was, and I think again more just a tip to the story and the isolation of the children, is Wim says the Jedi are the defenders of justice and keepers of peace in the galaxy, and we know that the story takes place after Return of the Jedi, so they've been gone for a while.
That's a fantastic one. I have a couple. One of my favorites, it's not a great secret that I am a deep, deep lover of Star Tours.
Yes.
And all the mythology and the things that go around Star Tours. So we do get the Star Tours, the 1000, the ship that is, the vehicle that you get to ride in on Star Tours. It's in the background right there around Port Borgo when they're doing their thing. It's another one of those teases, like all the ships seen in Rise of Skywalker, and you're picking out which one is here, which one is here. That Starspeeder 1000 in the background, just like 80s, 90s vibes, Star Tours. It begs the question, Disney, are we going to add a Port Borgo stop into the Star Tours video? Because we've updated it many times over the years.
They absolutely
definitely has to be on deck.
And I'll tell you what, let's get rid of some of the stuff in Galaxy's Edge and put Port Borgo there. I would rather hang out in Port Borgo than Oga's Cantina. Sorry, no offense to those that love it.
For New Orleans Square, where Pirates of the Caribbean is, just give us the Star Wars.
Let's take over all of Disney. Let's take over all of Disney World. Let's do that.
Yep.
This is one that I don't know if it's true or not, but it's the way I picked up on it. I didn't hear anybody else talk about it on any of the other shows, but it looks like a Corellian blood stripe on Jod's pants, the pants that he found in the ship. So in my mind, I'm going with that. I'm going for the stripe on the pants being Han Solo like. So which would make sense. Again, I feel like Jod is kind of Han Solo meets Obi-Wan Kenobi in this show.
I think that's and that's a perfect, he's the scoundrel. What is his deal?
Yes.
We're very much in scoundrel testing mode, as we'll call it. I wanted to talk about Kim for just a second.
Sure.
Kim was such a fun character. The vibes, and this comes back to all of our 80s callbacks. For anybody who watched The Dark Crystal in the 80s, the Dark Crystal vibes that come with Kim, comes with Afra, depending on how you pronounce that. You've got the telescope, you've got this creature, you've got all these like orbs and rotations. It is 100% feeding into that same nostalgia. And so we just keep expanding. We keep talking about Goonies and E.T.
Yeah.
But every week we're expanding the canon of what are the references, what are the things we're pulling from even more.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's I didn't even think of that one, but it's funny. I didn't think of that specifically, but I knew I recognized it, which is really
yeah. It's
that's
a sense
testament to the way
memory
it was.
thing, and we talked
Yep.
about with Greg earlier. You know, like
Yep.
it's something that sticks out for you. It wasn't put that way to intend that, but when people watched Dark Crystal back in the day,
Yep.
it planted itself in your memory, and you go, "I've seen that before. Where have I
Yeah.
seen that?"
Yep. Yep. The last Easter egg I'll point out again, there's always 1,000 of them, and there are people who do Easter egg videos much better than we do. Check those guys out. These are things that sort of stuck with me that again, this is why this episode was A New Hope to me, because the droid that was floating through the hallway that KB picked up on was a silver version of the torture droid from A New Hope. And it complete with a very similar sound. It sounded like a cross between the one in A New Hope and a probe droid, but it was that same kind of model, and again, a callback to stuff we know without it being overt.
Yep. Yeah, I have one other one. This was something else that I saw online. I know that our friends at Children of the Watch tweeted this out. Somebody else had tweeted a similar version of it. And so I went and did a little comparison and made these graphics myself. The badges and the planet map. Fern, the badge on the back of her backpack, and the map that Kim lays out. If you overlay it with that Imperial graphic, the 8 points, the planets, the positioning,
look at that.
They line up, and that creates this intrigue of it's too coincidental, but it's two separate things. It's the patch on the bag, and I know people have kind of depicted or interpreted, what are the graphics, what are the signs, what do the Arabesh mean? But I saw that, and then I couldn't not see it every time, the way different parts of that line up. So I thought that was really cool, and maybe feeds into what is the mystery, what is the conspiracy of what's going on here, who's connected to it.
That's wild. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things. I had a theory about added that I shared on Screen Crush this week, that it's the planet that is the First Order. They're building the First Order right now. They're building the paper pushers and the analysts and the financial guys, and then they try to figure out in these tests where these kids should go. And maybe Wim has tested out, and maybe he'll be put to another part of the planet where they train soldiers and sort of their more military type of kids. The challenge with Atten being a part of the First Order is, and again, I said this on Screen Crush as well, and I'll say it here, is it makes it very difficult to have a happy ending for the show. If the kids go back home, and it turns out home is the First Order sort of genesis, that's not a happy ending. And the kids are back with their families, great, but they're doing bad things. So I don't know that that's exactly what I think. Your idea of it being sort of a money laundering kind of thing is a little bit better. Maybe the kids get there, see that it's not good, especially after they've seen the rest of the galaxy or more of the galaxy, and maybe they don't stay. Maybe they make the decision to leave. But yeah, I think that's I think and I saw somebody say something, and Chris Ryans, if you're listening, I'm apologizing in advance. Somebody was saying, well, maybe Wim is Finn. He's not, but the only way I will say that's connected is maybe this is how they found some soldiers and they put them to work. The kids that weren't going to be financial analysts and whatever number crunchers were put into the army. But I don't know. Do you any comments on that, Nick?
No, I mean, again, similar apologies to Chris. Probably not, but we do hear, kids being kidnapped, kids being, conscripted. Jana was the same way, taken from families, taken into. So it's all on the table at this point, because that's the part of the galaxy and the universe and the timeline that those things are happening. Those foundations are being built for what the new order, First Order, Final Order is going to be.
Right. Yep. Well, Nick, anything else to add to this week's episode?
I have one final thing I want to add. I want to talk about KB for just a quick second. KB, like I said, it's kind of our wild card of the four kids. Has the digital implants. We hear at the very beginning when the parents are together Her moms are saying we've lost connection with her, and I forget the word they used. Her life monitoring system,
monitor system, or something. Yep.
Something like that. And so it creates the question. And there's two things, because also we kind of get these little like, is KB maybe force sensitive? They hint at that. They're in the hallway. They're the whatever, and she has a moment. But it's when that droid comes across that you're talking about. So is it an electronic thing that's connected to the visor and, all of that? This is not as much a theory, but they did call it a health life monitoring thing. It could be a plot point. If you remember one of the classic movies of the 90s, Con Air, we have Baby O, played by Bubba Blue, from Forrest Gump. He's Nicolas Cage's friend, and he's the one, he has the diabetes issue. And so in the middle of this movie, when the plane is happening and all these other crazy things are going on, he's got to get the insulin for his friend.
Yeah.
I think we're headed to a situation where in the middle of the adventures, the things that are going on, maybe KB has a health thing, because they say, and I saw somebody else tweet about it, and it was kind of in the background dialogue, has health needs or special health. They say something to that effect.
Right.
So what if KB has some sort of health thing that in the midst of this journey and this adventure, they're going to also have to like figure out how to save their friend, which adds layers of development and adventure, and Jod's going to have to make a decision. Yeah. It adds, he's going to have to make a decision. He's going to pretend like, oh, it's just a kid. But then is the better part of him going to get over? Are the kids going to force him into it?
Yeah.
KB brings the ability, not as a liability, mind you, but brings the ability to add so much more, because it's the character that we've seen them, but I feel like we've seen the least of them. So I'm very intrigued by KB and that character.
I agree 100% on that. I think that's actually, it's funny. You texted me, you said, I have some thoughts on KB. And I said, I think we're thinking the same thing. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that's going to become a plot piece, because even if they do have the proper coordinates from Kim, we've seen other planets and other drama happening in the series. So which either A, do they actually have the right coordinates, or is it going to take them somewhere nearby?
Well, it's Star Wars. No one can ever go directly from point A to point B. There's always something or two or three somethings that are going to show up in between.
Yep. That's absolutely correct. So, well, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. I do agree with you. I do think we're going to see a situation where they're going to have to help her in order to get home. And I think, similar to ET, right? ET suddenly becomes ill, and it's heartbreaking. And this that would be, it just seems to make sense. So, but Nick, that's going to do it for our second episode of Beyond the Barrier, exploring the mysteries of Skeleton Crew. I got to say, these first 3 episodes are just the beginning, and I can't wait to see where the show is going to take us next.
Just need it to be Tuesday again.
Yes. Bring on the Tuesday. So, remember, your input makes the show even better. So if you got theories, or if you spotted some Easter eggs that we missed, or you just want to debate that family tree of Gorian Shard's cousin or something, let us know. Call us at 504-321-1501. You can join us as a patron, or you can reach out to us on social media. We'll play your voicemails next week if you leave us something this week, and we'll make sure to get it on there. And that even includes if you happen to live in Enid, Oklahoma, and you want to talk to some guys at the liquor store about Skeleton Crew, right. Matt, we'll take it. We'll definitely play it on here for you. But if you enjoyed tonight's episode, be sure to give us a like, share it with your fellow Star Wars fans, and subscribe so you won't miss what's next. And for our podcast listeners, we'd love it if you gave us a 5-star review. It's the next best thing to a map to Atten. Nick,
that is right.
This has been a blast.
It has been a blast. I'm excited to do this again. Why can't it be Tuesday yet? That's really all I'm worried about at this point. But until it is Tuesday, and until next time, Pete, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.